Womanjika everyone, Womanjika meaning welcome. My name is Auntie Julianne and I'm an out of the Wurundjeri Woi-wurrung people, and in recognition of doing my welcome to country, I'd like to pay my respects to my elders past, present, future and any elders that were here today, and I would also like to welcome you all here today. The Wurundjeri Woi-wurrung tribe consists of 3 families, the Nevins, the Terricks and the Wandans, and I am part of the Nevin family. The 3 families all descend from one woman called Annie Barratt, which makes us one big family. Annie Barratt is the youngest sister of William Barratt, a pioneer for Aboriginal people in the 19th century, fighting for equality and land rights. I'm here today to welcome you all to the land of my ancestors. We call the land within our tribal boundaries our country. The Kulin Nation, Kulin meaning man, is made up of 5 groups. They are the Wurundjeri Woi-wurrung, Boonwurrung, Tanarong, Watharong and Dja-dja-wurrung. And to give you an outline of the Wurundjeri country and the area we cover. Wurundjeri country extends from north to the Great Dividing Range, east to Mount Baw Baw, south to the Morley Creek and west to the Werribee River. We cover a diverse range of land from the mountains to the beach and everything in between. Many thousands of years ago, if an Aboriginal person from another tribe wanted to cross our boundary, they would have to sit at the boundary and wait for the Narragator, which is the headman, or an elder to come past to give permission to cross. Traditional Aboriginal culture was highly territorial, and visitors risked a violent reprisal for crossing a tribal or clan boundary without this permission, and this is how a welcome to country originated in our culture. Traditionally, being welcomed onto country meant you respected Bunjil's law. Bunjil the wedge-tailed eagle is our creator, and Wah the crow is our protector. And as long as you looked after the country, you had access to our waterways and our land resources. And when you enter our country, we ask that you respect our resources, our fauna, flora and water, as they are very special to us. And when you are ready to leave, we ask that you leave it the way you found it.
We have lots of council services that support our community. We support families with children, including health services for children and mums, vaccinations, playgroups, childcare, and kinder. We support young people in our community. Through events and activities, we have services that can support people with disability, older people, and carers and family of people with disability and older people. Our libraries support everyone in our community, help people learn new things, and are free to join. We support our community to have fun and be active through events and activities, sport, and recreation areas. We help look after our places and spaces, the environment, and local businesses. We have laws to keep people safe, to make sure buildings are safe, to make sure roads and footpaths are safe, to make sure our places and spaces are safe. We make sure everyone follows the law to keep our community safe and happy. Moonee Valley. It's a great place to live, work, and visit.
Welcome to the Council meeting. I'm Councillor Piers Tyson, Mayor of Moonee Valley City Council. We aim to get started every second Tuesday at 6:30 p.m. However, sometimes there are some delays behind the scenes that we need to work through, and we appreciate your patience. You can have a look at our agenda online for all the issues that we'll be talking about tonight, and we look forward to seeing you soon. Thanks. So every second Tuesday we work through our council agenda, and what that means is working through things from procedural, day-to-day issues, financial reports, all the way up to the most important things in Moonee Valley, in Victoria or in Australia. And councillors can put up alternatives to that, can put up our staff officers' recommendation, and we can debate that and vote yes or no at the end of the day.
Woman Jika, everyone. Woman Jika meaning welcome. My name is Auntie Julianne, and I'm an elder of the Wurundjeri Woi-wurrung people, and in recognition of doing my welcome to country, I'd like to pay my respects to my elders past, present, future, and any elders that were here today, and I would also like to welcome you all here today. The Wurundjeri Woi-wurrung tribe consists of three families, the Nevins, the Terricks and the Wandans, and I'm part of the Nevin family. The three families all descend from one woman called Annie Barratt, which makes us one big family. Annie Barratt is the youngest sister of William Barratt, a pioneer for Aboriginal people in the 19th century, fighting for equality and land rights. I'm here today to welcome you all to the land of my ancestors. We call the land within our tribal boundaries our country. The Kulin Nation, Kulin meaning man, is made up of 5 groups. They are the Wurundjeri Woiwurrung, Boonwurrung, Tanarong, Watharong and Dja And to give you an outline of the Wurundjeri country and the area we cover. Wurundjeri country extends from north to the Great Dividing Range, east to Mount Baw, south to the Moorallic Creek and west to the Werribee River. We cover a diverse range of land from the mountains to the beach and everything in between. Many thousands of years ago, if an Aboriginal person from another tribe wanted to cross our boundary, they would have to sit at the boundary and wait for the Narragadah, which is the headman, or an elder to come past to give permission to cross. Traditional Aboriginal culture was highly territorial, and visitors risked a violent reprisal for crossing a tribal or clan boundary without this permission, and this is how a welcome to country originated in our culture. Traditionally, being welcomed onto country meant you respected Bunjil's law. Bunjil the wedge-tailed eagle is our creator, and Wah the crow is our protector. And as long as you looked after the country, you had access to our waterways and our land resources. And when you enter our country, we ask that you respect our resources, our fauna, flora and water, as they are very special to us. And when you are ready to leave, we ask that you leave it the way you found it.
We have lots of council services that support our community. We support families with children, including health services for children and mums, vaccinations, playgroups, childcare, and kinder. We support young people in our community. Through events and activities, we have services that can support people with disability, older people, and carers and family of people with disability and older people. Our libraries support everyone in our community, help people learn new things, and are free to join. We support our community to have fun and be active through events and activities, sport, and recreation areas. We help look after our places and spaces, the environment, and local businesses. We have laws to keep people safe, to make sure buildings are safe, to make sure roads and footpaths are safe, to make sure our places and spaces are safe. We make sure everyone follows the law to keep our community safe and happy. Moonee Valley. It's a great place to live, work, and visit.
Welcome to the Council meeting. I'm Councillor Piers Tyson, Mayor of Moonee Valley City Council. We aim to get started every second Tuesday at 6:30 p.m. However, sometimes there are some delays behind the scenes that we need to work through, and we appreciate your patience. You can have a look at our agenda online for all the issues that we'll be talking about tonight, and we look forward to seeing you soon. Thanks. So every second Tuesday we work through our council agenda, and what that means is working through things from procedural, day-to-day issues, financial reports, all the way up to the most important things in Moonee Valley, in Victoria or in Australia. And councillors can put up alternatives to that, can put up our staff officers' recommendation, and we can debate that and vote yes or no at the end of the day.
Woman Jika, everyone. Woman Jika meaning welcome. My name is Auntie Julianne, and I'm an elder of the Wurundjeri Woi-wurrung people. And in recognition of doing my welcome to country, I'd like to pay my respects to my elders, past, present, future, and any elders that were here today. And I would also like to welcome you all here today. The Wurundjeri Woi-wurrung tribe consists of 3 families, the Nevins, the Terricks, and the Wandans. And I'm part of the Nevin family. The 3 families all descend from one woman called Annie Barratt, which makes us one big family. Annie Barratt is the youngest sister of William Barratt, a pioneer for Aboriginal people in the 19th century, fighting for equality and land rights. I'm here today to welcome you all to the land of my ancestors. We call the land within our tribal boundaries our country. The Kulin Nation, Kulin meaning man, is made up of 5 groups. They are the Wurundjeri Woiwurrung, Boonwurrung, Tanarong, Watharong and Dja And to give you an outline of the Wurundjeri country and the area we cover. Wurundjeri country extends from north to the Great Dividing Range, east to Mount Baw, south to the Moolally Creek and west to the Werribee River. We cover a diverse range of land from the mountains to the beach and everything in between. Many thousands of years ago, if an Aboriginal person from another tribe wanted to cross our boundary, they would have to sit at the boundary and wait for the Narragator, which is the headman, or an elder to come past to give permission to cross. Traditional Aboriginal culture was highly territorial, and visitors risked a violent reprisal for crossing a tribal or clan boundary without this permission, and this is how a welcome to country originated in our culture. Traditionally, being welcomed onto country meant you respected Bunjil's law. Bunjil the wedge-tailed eagle is our creator, and Wah the crow is our protector. And as long as you looked after the country, you had access to our waterways and our land resources. And when you enter our country, we ask that you respect our resources, our fauna, flora and water, as they are very special to us. And when you are ready to leave, we ask that you leave it the way you found it.
Welcome everyone to the Council meeting on Tuesday the 30th of January 2024, which I now declare open at 6:33 p.m. I'd like to warmly welcome members of the public gallery who have joined us tonight, as well as those watching from home on our live stream. As well as the live stream, the video recording of the meeting will be available on our website, so attendees in the gallery are advised that your presence may be recorded. I also ask that mobile phones be switched to silent during the meeting, and a reminder as well that under Governance Rule 75.1, personal video and audio recording in the chamber of the meeting is not allowed. On behalf of Moonee Valley City Council, I respectfully acknowledge the traditional custodians of the land on which we meet, the Wurundjeri Woi-wurrung people of the Kulin Nation, and pay my respects to their spirits, ancestors, elders and community members. Item 2 on the agenda is apologies and leave of absence. I've received one apology from Councillor Nation, and note all other councillors are here tonight. Item 3 is the confirmation of minutes. Councillors, can I please have a mover and seconder that the minutes from the council meeting held on Tuesday the 12th of December 2023 be confirmed? It's moved Councillor Sypek, seconded Councillor Byrne. I'll put that to the vote. All those in favour? That's carried unanimously. Item 4 is declarations of conflict of interest. Does any councillor have a conflict of interest on any item on the agenda? Councillor Bedio.
Thank you, Mayor. Through you, I'll declare a material conflict of interest for agenda item 9.1 for reasons previously disclosed to the CEO.
Thank you, Councillor Bedio. I'll note that all other councillors have declared a general conflict of interest on the planning application MV 366 2019A, 11 to 17 Holmes Road, Moonee Ponds. The governance advice received confirmed that councillors can deal with item 9.1, alternative manner to determine the planning application MV 366 2019A, 11 to 17 Holmes Road, Moonee Ponds, because it's a procedural report on how to determine the planning application in an alternative manner as an exemption of conflict of interest provisions applies. Are there any other conflicts of interest? Councillor Sypek.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. 9.4, as previously discussed with the CEO.
Thank you, Councillor Sypek. Item 5 is presentations. Before I ask councillors if they have any presentations, I'd like to acknowledge the Victorian Government's announcement yesterday of municipal monitors that have been appointed to Moonee Valley City Council. As I said in a statement yesterday, I trust Moonee Valley will be an important case study in professional and positive practices. I'm looking forward to meeting and working with our monitors and working with them for the next 6 months for the best interests of our community and good governance. And I'm sure all councillors agree with me on that point as well. Are there any other presentations, councillors? Councillor Sharp.
Thank you, Mayor. In light of the Australia Day Awards, I would like to acknowledge a couple of, or a few locals actually, that have been awarded with the prestigious OAM. First is Arthur Witchell from Essendon, or Athletics Essendon, rather than Athletics Essendon. So Athletics Essendon and obviously us, Moonee Valley Council and our community would like to congratulate Arthur Witchell, OAM, on receiving an Order of Australia in recognition for his contribution to athletics. Arthur became a member of the Essendon Amateur Athletic Club in 1946 and quickly assumed an active role by joining the committee in the early 1950s. His unwavering dedication has spanned an impressive 75 years, a milestone that was joyously celebrated in 2022. Throughout this remarkable journey, Arthur has held various key positions within the club, including President, Secretary, Registrar, Official, Equipment and Competition Manager. His exceptional commitment and tireless efforts have served as an inspiration to numerous generations of athletes and parents alike. I would also like to congratulate 2 residents, Lisa Ann Fitzpatrick, AO, for distinguished service to the nursing and midwifery professions, and Anastasia Darras, AM, for significant service to community health, particularly to ill children and their families. We thank you for your community efforts and congratulate all of you on your important awards. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Sharp. Are there any other presentations? Councillor Isa.
Thanks, Mayor. I just wanted to say a huge thank you to the staff of Moonee Valley City Council, who assisted with our Christmas Day brunch, obviously held on Christmas Day last year. It was the first time that we've tried this, holding a brunch for people who might otherwise have no one to share a Christmas lunch with, or just be in need of some food on Christmas Day. And a couple of dozen staff members supported the initiative through both financial contributions and also volunteering on Christmas morning to assist in delivering that brunch to about 80 community members. So on behalf of all councillors, I did want to thank all of the staff who assisted and supported the initiative, particularly, if I'm allowed to mention, Sharon Keppel, who did an amazing amount of work behind the scenes to make sure it happened, and also to our CEO and her family who supported us on the day so generously with their time. So thank you again, and I hope it's something that we might be able to continue into the future.
Thank you, Councillor Isa. Would any other councillor like to present on any item? If not, we move on to item 6, petitions and joint letters. Councillors, do we have any petitions or joint letters? If not, we move on to public question time, and we've received 25 questions from 14 residents this evening. A reminder that there's no opportunity for additional questions to be asked and no discussion other than by councillors under Governance Rule 61.9. The first 2 questions are from Brian Duggan, and Brian has asked, is the council aware that in Feb 2018 the LXRP produced an individual site report on the removal of Puckle and Park Street level crossings? State Cabinet approved the report in Jan 2021 and an initial feasibility assessment was produced by LXRP in March 2021. Thank you, Brian, for your question. I'll ask our CEO, Helen Swee, to respond.
Thank you, Brian. Susan Mayer. Council officers have liaised with representatives from various Victorian government departments to obtain all publicly available information relevant to the potential removal of the existing level crossings at Puckle Street and Park Street in Moonee Ponds. To date, council officers have not received a feasibility assessment report dated March 2021. We would, however, welcome any information you may have regarding this item for potential inclusion into the current feasibility assessment. Thank you.
Thank you, CEO. And Brian's second question is, given the apparent importance and relevance of these reports to MVCC's preparation of a feasibility report into the removal of these level crossings, has the council approached the Infrastructure Minister and local MP Danny Pearson to access these reports? And I'll ask our CEO to respond.
Thank you, Brian. Susan Mayer, as noted in the prior question, Council has strongly advocated to the Victorian Government and its agencies for the removal of the existing level crossings at Puckle Street and Park Street in Moonee Ponds, including but not limited to the sharing of all publicly available information it may have. Thank you.
Thank you, CEO. The next 2 questions are from David Uber, and David's first question is, has Council made any progress working with City of Melbourne and other stakeholders for improvement in Racecourse Road, Flemington, and in parentheses, in particular, bicycle safety? And I'll ask our CEO to respond.
Thank you, David. Susan Mayer, Council has been working closely with the City of Melbourne to investigate the opportunities for streetscape improvements along Racecourse Road in Flemington, including potential upgrades to bicycle infrastructure, active transport links, public transport, and the road alignment. The Strategic Opportunities paper is currently under review, with community consultation and engagement anticipated to commence in the latter part of this financial year. Thank you.
Thank you. David's second question is, given the DTP pop-up bike lanes program has come and gone without installing pop-up lanes on Mount Alexander Road, does Council still intend to investigate improvements to cycling safety on Mount Alexander Road? I'll ask the CEO to respond.
Thank you, David. Susan Mayer, Mount Alexander Road is a declared arterial road and under the responsibility of the Victorian Government. Council's role is one of advocacy on behalf of the community. To that end, Council officers regularly meet with representatives from the Department of Transport and Planning to improve road safety across the municipality, including Mount Alexander Road, for all road users. Furthermore, the 2023-24 Council Plan initiatives include several initiatives to improve active transport, walking and cycling across the municipality. Initiative C3.1 identifies the need to continue the road safety advocacy efforts at key locations, including Essendon North Junction and other identified dangerous crossing points, particularly on Mount Alexander Road. Thank you.
Thank you. The next two questions are from Jodie Kinnersley, and Jodie's first question is, could Council please provide an update on the renewal of its Rainbow Tick accreditation, which expired last year? I'll ask the CEO to respond.
Thank you, Jodie. Susan Mayor. On 12th of September 2023, Council's Aged and Disability Team and the Young Communities Team were successfully assessed against the Rainbow Ticket accreditation. The Rainbow Ticket accreditation is for a 3-year period until 12th September 2026. Thank you.
Thank you. And could Council please provide an update on the development of the Roadmap to Pride plan?
Thank you, Jodie. Susan Mayor. Council continues to work with the Moonee Valley Pride Reference Group to identify priorities for this community in line with Council Plan initiatives and our MV 2040 vision. We affirm our commitment to the safety and inclusion of our LGBTIQA+ community through the Rainbow Ticket accreditation and ensuring visibility and solidarity, such as attendance at the Midsummer Pride March and representation at council events and programs. Thank you.
Thank you. The next two questions are from Peter Robinson. The first I've disallowed under Governance Rule 61.8. However, Peter's second question was, are councils required to have working with children permits? If so, are they required to report relevant details to the authorities when they contravene this permit? And I'll ask the CEO to respond.
Thank you, Peter. Through the Mayor, Council prides itself on being a child-safe organisation and has zero tolerance for child abuse. Council adheres to the Victorian Child Safe Standards and related legislations. Council laws receive information and training on the Child Safe Standards and the obligations through the Council Induction Programme. The obligations are also included in the Council Code of Conduct. There is no requirement for councillors in the capacity as a councillor to have a Working with Children check under the Local Government Act 2020. However, when councillors are required to work with children, they will undertake Working with Children check. Council also has a legal obligation to report all forms of child abuse and harm. Thank you.
Thank you. Now, Council received 17 questions from 10 residents regarding the conflict in Gaza. As some of the questions received were of a similar nature, we've grouped them into broad themes tonight. So we'll be providing 4 responses in accordance with Governance Rule 6110, which permits questions to be grouped together and a single answer provided. I'd like to thank Megan, April, Greta, Annabelle, Rebecca, Matt, Adriana, Hunter, Eleanor, and Declan for submitting your questions. Now, the first question relates to meeting requests and is, why were there no councillors in attendance at the recently held Moonee Valley for Palestine community event last Saturday? And also, would councillors attend a meeting or discussion with a small number of residents and various institutional and community representatives to hear about residents' concerns and desire for council to pass a motion of solidarity with Palestine? I'll ask the CEO to respond.
Thank you for your questions. Susan Mayor, councillors are invited to community events on a weekly basis by a number of community groups in the municipality and have the discretion to choose which event to attend, depending on the availability and personal commitments. It should be noted that over the Australia Day weekend, many councillors attended our annual hearing ceremony, citizenship ceremony, and other community events. Thank you.
Thank you. Now the next questions are related to acts of solidarity and are, will Council show support for Palestine by doing things such as passing a motion of solidarity with Palestine or raising the Palestinian flag? And I'll ask the CEO to respond.
Thank you for your questions, Susan Mayor. Council as an organisation does not have a position on the conflict in Gaza, except that we empathise with everyone directly and indirectly impacted. Foreign policy is a responsibility of the Commonwealth Government. We encourage concerned community members to contact relevant federal representatives directly on this matter. Thank you.
Thank you. The next question is related to procurement and essentially boycotts. Now, would Council consider reviewing their contracts and procurement policy in relation to international suppliers, particularly with those with perceived interests in the ongoing conflict in Gaza? And would Council consider exploring options to cease commitments to or contracts with these companies through Council's procurement processes? And the CEO to respond.
Thank you for your questions, Susan Mayor. In November last year, Council adopted a new procurement policy which applies to all procurement activities at Moonee Valley City Council and is applicable to councillors and council staff. This updated policy was aimed at enhancing Council's strategic objectives such as sustainable and socially responsible procurement, supporting local economies and obtaining value for money, leading to a better result in the provision of services for the community. Council is confident that all Council's procurement activities are performed in an open, transparent, and ethical manner, which demonstrated integrity, fairness, and accountability that meets proper ethical expectations and all legal requirements. Given the procurement policy has been recently reviewed, there is no plan for Council to conduct another review. Thank you.
Thank you, CEO. The final question is related to support for our local communities. What is Council doing to support Middle Eastern and Islamic communities impacted by the ongoing violence in the Middle East and all those from war-torn countries? How is Council working to ensure that all people feel safe and included?
Thank you for your questions. Through the Mayor, Moonee Valley City Council is proud of its diverse community, cultures, and backgrounds, and we pride ourselves on our inclusiveness and a warm, welcoming attitude for all residents. Our MV 2040 community vision celebrates a Moonee Valley where people are healthy and safe. Council is committed to addressing barriers to health, safety, and inclusion for all our residents. Council is proud of its cultural diversity, with more than a quarter of our community living here, born overseas. This includes those from Middle Eastern countries and Muslim backgrounds. Council has a strong history of developing projects and services specifically with and for our culturally and linguistically diverse CALD community, including our commitment to cultural safety. At Council, we recognize that people with a CALD background can experience unique threats to safety and inclusion, and we continue to develop our whole of community and intersectional approach to community safety to deliver appropriate responses. To ensure everyone feels welcome over the course of the year, Council recognized almost 100 days of significance, which include a range of environmental, social, cultural, religious, or national events. We do this because it reflects the diversity of our community, and we acknowledge for those who practice these faiths or relate to a particular day of significance. Thank you.
Thank you, CEO, and I'd like to thank all of our questioners as well as those who have joined us in the gallery this evening in their passion and empathy for others. So thank you for joining us. Item 8 is reports from delegates. Councillors, do we have any reports in your responsibilities as delegates? If not, we'll move on to reports, and Councillor Bedio has declared a conflict on the following item, so we'll give him a moment to leave the chamber. Item 9.1 is alternative manner to determine the planning application MV/366/2019/A 11 to 17 Holmes Road, Moonee Ponds. Councillors, do I have a motion? Councillor Isa.
I'd like to move the officer's recommendation with some small changes. I might just read the whole motion if that's okay.
Yep.
That council resolves to A, note that due to all councillors declaring a conflict of interest in on the planning application MV/366/2019/A 11 to 17 Holmes Road, Moonee Ponds, in brackets, land in plan of consolidation 104247 and lot 8 on plan of subdivision 11397, close brackets. Use of a restaurant liquor licence associated with restaurant and bottle shop, partial demolition, external paintworks, building works and display of business identification signage, in brackets including internal illumination, close brackets, in a heritage overlay area, in brackets, the application, close brackets, council is unable to establish a delegated committee in accordance with the requirement of section 63(1)(a) of the Local Government Act 2020 to determine the application. B, note the Chief Executive Officer has sought compliance exemption under section 177 of the Local Government Act 2020 from the Minister for Local Government, and Local Government Victoria has since noted that it may also be open to council to consider delegating the matter to a member of council staff with relevant delegation and explore any other options for dealing with the planning matter as an alternative to seeking a compliance exemption under section 177 of the Local Government Act 2020 in the first instance. C, note that council has sought independent legal advice on the options for dealing with the planning matter under section 67 of the Local Government Act 2020. D, as a result of points A, B and C, and as a means of dealing with the application in an alternative manner in accordance with section 67 of the Local Government Act 2020, following updated legal advice provided to council on 25 January 2024. 1, determine not to apply council's statutory planning delegation policy concerning the application. 2, pursuant to section 188 of the Planning and Environment Act 1987, delegate to the council staff holding, acting in or performing the duties of the position of Manager Planning and Building the power under section 61 of the Planning and Environment Act 1987 to determine the application. 3, direct council's Director Strategy and Planning to notify councillors of the outcome of the application and place the outcome on council's online planning application register. And E, request the Mayor write to the Minister for Local Government outlining the difficulties council has experienced in the application of section 67 and making any relevant suggestions for improving its clarity.
Thank you, Councillor Isa. Is there a seconder? Councillor Hodgson. Councillor Isa. So please feel free to take a sip of water if you need to.
If that's okay. Thank you. Look, this is obviously been quite a complicated situation for council, and it's one in which we've been really concerned to make sure that we do absolutely the right thing in terms of governance. It's involved a situation where, very unusually, councillors have declared a conflict of interest on a particular application, and that's then involved us trying to work out how to apply the relevant section of the Local Government Act, section 67, which makes provision for losing quorum due to conflict of interest. Our difficulty was in understanding whether the different options outlined in section 67 were an exhaustive list of options, alternative options for us, or whether we were entitled to come up with another alternative way of dealing with the situation. And when this came to us in December, as a well, I guess I can only speak for myself, but I think that our decision, I think, was based on the fact that we didn't feel that we had the adequate information to know whether Section 67 was an exhaustive list of options for us. We had some legal advice and the situation just wasn't clear for us. So over the period, we thank our CEO for writing to the Minister and seeking further advice about what we should do in this very highly unusual situation. And we appreciate the guidance from Local Government Victoria and the guidance from some updated legal advice and our governance team in helping us to understand that the interpretation of Section 67, we've been advised that we can look at another alternative manner other than the two modes that are set out in that section. So what this motion puts forward is based on that legal advice and that governance advice that we've received, an alternative manner of dealing with this planning application, which is to delegate the decision to the appropriate staff members. We've learnt a lot about the application of Section 67 in this process, and we have found it quite difficult. Hence, point A, I think that it's worth us reflecting back to Local Government Victoria and the Minister our experiences to perhaps help with some further clarification of the operation of that section. I do note that the situation that we found ourselves in was highly unusual, and it may be that other councils don't find themselves in that situation, but I think the learnings that we've had might be useful for the sector, hence point E. Look, obviously, around the table, we are absolutely keen to make sure that we meet the governance expectations of our community, of Local Government Victoria and of the state government. This has been a situation where we've learnt some things and that's useful for us. We hope that we can continue to improve our governance practices. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Isa. Councillor Hodgson.
Thanks, Mayor, and I think Councillor Isa's given a very good summary of this report and the decision that's in front of us. I just wanted to add, further to your statement at the start of the meeting that an exemption applies for me and others tonight to make a decision on this report as it's presented, because it's on the process rather than actually on the matter in which I have a general conflict of interest. And I think, as Councillor Isa has indicated, we were all very cautious to make sure that any decision that we are asked to make that comes under an exemption of the Local Government Act is done in an appropriate manner, and with this coming to us as an officer's recommendation for an alternative manner in which to decide the application, I'm comfortable and noting the governance and legal advice that's been provided to support this officer's recommendation. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Hodgson. Would any other councillor like to speak? If not, I'll put that to the vote. All those in favour? And that's carried unanimously. I'll now ask Councillor Bedio to rejoin us. Welcome back, Councillor Bedio. Item 9.2 is review of active transport improvement opportunities, Steel Creek, Niddrie and Airport West. Councillors, do I have a motion? Councillor Byrne.
Thanks, Mayor. I'd like to move the officer's recommendation with an additional point D, please. with point D to read, in accordance with priority, and just on the screen, priority with the T, priority action in Council's advocacy strategy 2022 to 25 to provide safe and better connected walking and cycling paths, to write to the Minister for Public and Active Transport, the Honourable Gabrielle Williams MP, and the Member for Nidri, the Honourable Ben Carroll MP, advising that Council is seeking grant funding to deliver additional active transport links across the Calder Freeway in Airport West.
Thank you, Councillor Byrne. Is there a seconder? Councillor Sypek. Councillor Byrne.
Thanks, Mayor. This is a report back off the back of a notice of motion. We have some really big connectivity issues in Moonee Valley, and one of the ones that has been discussed a lot is that connection, particularly between Airport West and East Keilor, and it came to light a lot, particularly in regards to the future direction of the proposed new train station. It has been long talked about, and I'm sure that we've got a great historian here, and Councillor Sypek will probably discuss it when he gets a chance to speak. But it is something that people want to do. I think that it's something that, as councillors, we've discussed around this table a lot, how we want to get people out of their cars and into active transport. So this report was quite specific about how do we actually do this, because it's hard. We know it's hard. If it was easy, it probably would have been one of the ones that would have been done. And not only is it hard, it's also expensive. And but we have some really basics in terms of where we are and what we need to do. The report's I think really thorough. It wasn't something that we wanted to spend, heaps of time on and heaps of money on, but just the basics of what the particular options were. And two options came back in regards to improved connectivity across the Calder Freeway. And one was an overpass and one was an underpass. And in short, one cost about $17 million and one cost $26 million. Now, obviously, from a council point of view, it's not necessarily something that we would be funding, and that is definitely not something that I'm asking council to do today. I think that the officer's recommendation was particularly good. I just noted that in point C, we're talking about exploring external funding, because at the end of the day it's not going to be us that will be funding this, and just in line with that I just put in point D because it does tie into our endorsed advocacy strategy, providing safe and better connected walking and cycling paths. I think that if this is something that we know is floating about, we know that our local member has been quite a strong advocate for the train station, it's something that I think that we should be writing to the relevant ministers to say, this is on our agenda, we think that is needed, we know that it's expensive, but if this is something that aligns in with you guys, we would love to be considered. Hopefully this gets done at some point. It would be great if there are future grants that are able to assist us, because at the end of the day we really do want to improve the connectivity between our suburbs to get people from point A to point B without always jumping in a car. Thanks, Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Byrne. Councillor Sypek.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. And like Councillor Byrne said, this has been a topic for many, many years, and I think the favourite pass would have been the underpass for a lot of the local residents. But as you can say, the financial implications are quite sort of high. And the only way this will be achieved in the future is if we have state or federal support here. And like I said, it's been there for a very, very long time. It disconnects the Airport West community and also the Keilor Park community as well, which is not a part of our council, but it's right next door. And look, it's just been a topic of and do we bite the bullet? Do we look at funding? Do we actually budget for it over the next 5 or 10 years? Do we get a plan? Do we have a strategy for it? I don't know. They're the kind of questions that we have to determine as a council. And is it viable for this council? Is it something that this council has to do, deliver for the community? But big projects like this, I think you'll find that most councils in this situation will probably not have the funds, and unless the state or the federal come and help, I think the reality of this project is going to be very, very low.
Thank you. Thank you, Councillor Sypek. Would any other councillor like to speak? Councillor Isa.
Thanks. Look, thanks very much to the officers for coming back so quickly with, coming back with something so comprehensive. I mean, to say there was actually a bit of a time delay because they were putting so much effort into getting the detail right, and really appreciate the different options that are put forward. Obviously, means of improving cycling and walking access across the freeway would really open up things for residents in Niddrie and Airport West. So I support the motion and also support that last point. Obviously, this is not something that we can afford, and it's something that higher levels of government would need to fund. So yeah, that's. Thanks for that addition, Councillor Byrne. Happy to support that.
Thank you, Councillor Isa. Would any other councillor like to speak? If not, I'll put that to the vote. All those in favour? That's carried unanimously. Item 9.3 is response to notice and motion number 2023/41, cycling and walking strategy. Councillors, do I have a motion? Councillor Isa.
Thanks very much, Mayor. I'll move the officer's recommendation with an additional point C that reads, request that the process of developing an integrated transport strategy includes 1, emphasising the role of active transport in brackets cycling, walking and public transport close brackets as a component of the integrated transport network. 2, an evaluation of the walking and cycling strategy 2012 to 22, including quantitative data showing the impacts of council initiatives to improve active transport trips. 3, an analysis of data provided by external mapping tools such as BikeSpot, Arrivo, then in brackets RACV, close brackets, and other sources of cycling and walking data. And 4, engagement with relevant key stakeholders, for example, local active transport users, including the Moonee Bicycle Users Group, BUG, and the Moonee Valley Sustainability Active Transport Group, and then point D as recommended.
Thank you, Councillor Isa. Would any... is there a seconder? Councillor Byrne. Councillor Isa.
Thank you. Look, this follows on nicely from the previous motion where we are trying to look at cycling and walking and active transport as a key priority as a mode of transport across the municipality. We had a strategy in place, the walking and cycling strategy, which went to 2022. And I brought a notice of motion late last year to find out what officers' intentions were with respect to next steps in our planning and strategic planning around cycling and walking and active transport. The report from officers is a really clear explanation of what their intentions are with respect to an integrated transport strategy, and I can understand the reasoning in moving from a specific cycling and walking strategy to an integrated transport strategy. I guess the hope is that in looking at it more holistically and looking at the different transport modes in that strategic context of all types of transport, there might be some more coherent thinking around how the transport modes link together, how the different strategies that we have all link together, and also land use planning. It gives council some better guidance around whether we might need to look at land acquisitions to make some of these transport links work. So I can understand the reasoning for moving to an integrated transport plan. I was initially a little worried that the emphasis on cycling and walking and active transport not be lost in that, and hence the point C, making sure that that emphasis is still there as a component of the integrated transport network. I've also had some feedback from people from the Moonee Valley, or the Moonee BUG, and other active transport advocates who were concerned about making sure that there be an evaluation of the the behaviour change and an evaluation of any data that came through from the previous strategy. So again, hence just the inclusion of points 2 and point 2 to make it explicit that that data evaluation will take place. And I think the report notes that the time frame for the development of the strategy does have a data collection phase. And that also covers point 3. There were some, and I thank the residents who contacted me, noting the different sources of data and just wanting to make sure that Council's really reaching out to some of the many different sources of data that we can to help us with the development of our strategy. And also just that point 4, making sure that engagement with our local advocates takes place, which I'm sure it would have, but I'm keen to put it explicitly in the motion. So I look forward to the development of that strategy and for the engagement of community members going forward to map out some infrastructure across Moonee Valley to continue to improve active transport particularly. Thanks.
Thank you. Councillor Byrne.
Thank you, Mayor. Look, I think this is a really important step forward because there was a question earlier tonight in regards to the bike lanes on Mount Road, and I think we need to show the community that we do have the passion and that we do want to take that step forward and improve our transport links, our active transport links within the municipality. I think this week, if any, is probably one of the busiest weeks on our roads, particularly with the return of back to school. So many people actually do drop-offs in the first week because it might be their child or whoever they're looking after for first time. So everyone often brings extra people as well. And anything around our schools can be quite diabolical, and I've been lucky to be quite interested, and I've given a few presentations in regards to the better moves around schools. And I think that it's a really good program, but as you know, a mother of young kids, it's a shame that you sort of sit here and go, oh, it's still unsafe to say can ride your bike to school. And I think that as a council we really should be working so that kids do have that opportunity to know that they're riding safely to school, and that we're doing what we can to improve that situation for kids, because otherwise people will continue to take the car, and we really do need that behaviour change for people who can. And look, riding a bike to school is not for everyone, and I completely understand that. But I think we need to get better at this. It is something that we've spoken a fair bit about, so hopefully with this going forward, we can really start ticking some more things off. That's not taking away what was done in the past 10 years. I definitely think that there has been some much needed upgrades, but there are many more to come. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Byrne. Would any other councillor like to speak? Councillor Hodgson.
Thanks, Mayor. And look, thank you, officers, for the report, and Councillor Isa for the addition. I think when it comes to something this big and, walking and cycling, what we understand is that, great separation for active transport lanes can't always be achieved. So a lot of times we're going to see that they will remain on roads. So I can see definitely the advantage of having an integrated transport strategy. We certainly want walking and cycling and active transport to be prominent in that strategy, but I can see the sense in having it be rolled together, and I think the previous report also indicates a good reason for that. Our road infrastructure just isn't modernised enough for us to be able to have safe cycling and walking paths everywhere we want. It's a real barrier to connection and safe movement around our city for people who want to choose sustainable and active transport options. And I think that the cost outlined in that previous report really indicates that we need to have a major overhaul. I know we were frustrated around the table as well when we tried to when we had the results and recommendations from officers for how to spend our community climate emission reduction fund, that the amount that we set aside, which we felt, was substantial, was really not going to touch the sides of some of the challenges that the municipalities facing in terms of improving safe walking and cycling paths. So it is a really big challenge that we face. It's a very expensive problem that we have, and I can see that the challenge for a 10-year integrated transport strategy is a big one. I look forward to seeing what ideas get brought to us, and particularly ones that might be suggested by those user groups and stakeholders who are out there on the ground and have a lot to offer to the ideas that we have going forward. So thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Hodgson. Would any other councillor like to speak? If not, I'll put that to the vote. All those in favour? It's carried unanimously. The next item on the agenda, Councillor Sypek has declared a conflict of interest, so I'll give him a moment to leave the chamber. Item 9.4 is response to notice of motion number 2023/45, Helping Hands Mission Airport West. Councillors, do I have a motion? Councillor Isa.
Thanks, Mayor. I'd like to move the officer's recommendation with some amendments. I'll just read point B and point C. So point B to read, note that officers will continue to actively liaise with Helping Hands Mission Incorporated to engage in these processes appropriately and provide in-kind assistance with line marking, directional signage from Matthews Avenue, Airport West, and any other appropriate in-kind support. And point C, request the development by March 2024 of a draft community support policy setting out criteria and processes for the provision of financial support to essential community services, including organisations that provide critical food, welfare and emergency assistance for our community. The policy should consider how Council can provide one-off financial support in extraordinary and time-sensitive circumstances. And could I just perhaps suggest that essential community services doesn't need to be capitalised?
Thank you. And also I'll just check with governance that under point A is numbered correctly. Thank you. I assume point A remained the same, Councillor Isa? Yep. Is there a seconder? Councillor Hodgson. Councillor Isa.
Thanks, Mayor. Look, I'm conscious that this is in response to a notice of motion that the Mayor brought to the chamber. So I'm acknowledge your role in this particular motion, but being in the chair, that it's incumbent on other councillors to move it forward at this point. Look, thanks to officers for providing providing a report in response to the notice of motion. I guess one of the difficulties that we've come up against a couple of times as a council is that we can see in the community some organisations who do extraordinary work and really in many ways do the work of council. I was talking with someone today who remembers when council used to give out food vouchers and when council used to take a really active role in providing welfare and emergency relief for residents. And we don't do that anymore, and we rely on charities and organisations like Helping Hands Mission to do that. And Helping Hands, look, I know it sounds as though it's identifying one particular organisation, where there are, of course, a number of organisations in the municipality who do work, but Helping Hands Mission provide this support on a scale that no other organisation does in our community. If anyone has been to Helping Hands in Airport West, then you've seen this and you know this. On a daily basis, dozens and dozens of people are provided with food that they would not otherwise have access to. And in a time where we have cost of living pressures and people really struggling, I think we cannot thank and commend and acknowledge too much the work of Helping Hands mission. In a similar way, we had a situation last year where the SES provides work or provides assistance to residents, emergency assistance to residents, work that otherwise council would have to do. And again, we're in a situation where we need, I believe, we need to find a way of supporting these organisations. And while the report that we've got points to our grants program and our budget submission, the assistance that often these organisations provide is more time sensitive, and we don't have at the moment, I guess what we've realised through this process is that we don't have the appropriate policy in place to assist organisations who are doing this tremendously valuable work. And so the point C in this alternative motion is to ask for the development of that policy. Because our grants process is for a different type of assistance to different types of work, different type of community work. Our budget submission process, we did award the SES some financial support last budget, but it was a little bit awkward in that it would have been a much better process if we'd had a policy on which to rest that on and assess that against. So I do encourage anyone who hasn't taken an interest in the work of Helping Hands to familiarise yourself with that work and to support Helping Hands if you can. They are supporting our community members and we're very, very appreciative of that. And I hope that my colleagues see the need for the development of this policy that enables us to provide some support to these types of organisations. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Isa. Councillor Hodgson.
Thanks, Mayor. Look, I'm very supportive of this. I think, in the situation that Helping Hands have found themselves, the very unfortunate situation of having to vacate their current premises, organisations like them pour everything they have, every dollar, every donation goes directly to the people that they're assisting, and they don't have the kind of safety net that some other organisations, might have, businesses, other for-profit organisations, to be able to respond to a situation like this, an unforeseen situation. And there's obviously Helping Hands has been able to receive a number of substantial grants from both the state government and from the community bank to assist, and there's a shortfall that they've come asking council for. I certainly support managing our funds in a way that's transparent and appropriate, and I think that in having a community support policy like is described in point C they're developed, we'll just be able to be a bit more be able to respond to this call for help that comes from organisations like Helping Hands that operate in Moonee Valley and just need this urgent one-off assistance. I think, through the COVID times, we developed a new grant stream for responsive grants. That's not appropriate in this setting, just purely because of the amounts that are available. But in that time, we recognised that there were times where people in our community required this kind of urgent or time-sensitive assistance from council. So I see this as something of an extension to responding to that need, just on a slightly larger scale. And as Councillor Isers mentioned, Helping Hands operates on a very large scale. It helps hundreds of people, families, and I think, it has been the trigger for this need for support, and I hope that the next time we're faced with a request like this, we've got the appropriate mechanism to respond appropriately.
Thank you, Councillor Hodgson. Would any other councillor like to speak? Councillor Byrne.
Thanks, Mayor. I'd like to move an amendment to remove the words in point C by March 2024.
Thank you, Councillor Byrne. Is there a seconder for the amendment? Councillor Bedio. Councillor Byrne.
Thanks, Mayor. Well, and I'll just speak to the amendment. I'm just very mindful of the time frame that's been put on this. We're now sitting on the 30th of January. The way that the council reports work, this would be an incredibly tight turnaround. I also think that by putting the date in, it's almost as though we're creating this policy for this particular purpose for Helping Hands. I actually like the idea of the policy. I think it's something that we've uncovered that we need. Like we need something like this that might be able to help what's listed there. But I am worried about, I suppose, finding a need and then I'm just not too sure about it. It doesn't sit comfortably with me. I don't think that the date needs to be in there. There might be a chance that the officers can turn around this request in relatively quick timing, but we're talking about a whole draft policy, and it's going to be, like the way I'm reading it, quite big and quite important going forward, and I don't want to see something like this rushed. We want to ensure that the governance behind it is correct, and something that's not anticipated on the 30th of January and then being asked to come back so quickly, I just don't think is particularly necessary. Thanks, Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Byrne. Councillor Bedio.
Through you, Mayor. Look, I concur with my colleague, Councillor Byrne. Overall, I'm very supportive of the notion around the community support policy. It does address a need that we've identified, as Councillor Isers mentioned, if we're looking at organisations such as the SES, very well-deserving organisations. However, I don't believe that a month will be sufficient time to develop a robust policy, and this policy does need to be robust. We're looking at the allocation of funds, and in certain instances it would be significant volume of funds. We need to make sure there's a robust policy in place that ensures probity is kept in mind, and I want to make sure that officers have sufficient time to develop that policy. So I'm happy to support that amendment.
Thank you, Councillor Bedio. Would any other councillor like to speak on the amendment? Councillor Hodgson.
Thanks, Mayor. Look, I am not supportive of the amendment. I think that we often set quite aspirational targets for our officers, and I can think of at least one example. I think there was a trial commercial events policy that we wanted ready in time for a summer festival season that came to us quite quickly. I do note that there's the word draft in there, so that it's development of a draft community support policy by March 2024. And I do think that that's an appropriate amount of time. Yes, very quick, and often, where things can't be, where there are delays for whatever reason, officers work with councillors on achieving timelines as best they can. So, look, I'm supportive of those words remaining in. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Hodgson. Would any other councillor like to speak on the amendment? Councillor Isers.
Yeah, look, we often have very quick turnaround of draft policies like this. Like the events policy last year was a similar situation. The trial events policy, I very deliberately put the word draft in there so that it's very clear to officers that it's not the intention that the policy would be completed in 2 months, but I do think it's realistic to have a draft suggestion come back to us. Officers know that these are aspirational timelines and that we are very understanding when there's need to extend those sorts of timelines. I'd just also note that in the report that we were just looking at with respect to the improvement opportunities for Nidri and Airport West with the Steel Creek, that the original motion asked for the report to come back by May 2023, and the report notes that it wasn't available by May 2023, and in fact it came to us tonight. And there was no issue from any councillor understanding the delay in the timeline. That's a whole sort of 8 months later. So I think that officers understand that when we put timelines into motions, they are what we hope can be achieved. And as I've said, I've very deliberately noted that it's just a draft policy. I don't think that this policy would need to be more than a couple of pages long. Most of the robustness to the policy could be very similar to our grant or our budget type policies. It's really around looking at the sort of criteria that we might put around the type of organisations that we're suggesting might be able to be helped through this process. So I don't think it would be a very lengthy policy. And if officers can't bring it by March 2024, they know how understanding we are about that's the extension of timelines in that circumstance.
Thank you, Councillor Isa. Would any other councillor like to speak on the amendment? I'll ask the mover of the amendment whether she would like a right of reply.
Just to say, I suppose that just because it's a draft community support policy, I suppose normally when we put things out as a draft, there are normally, very minimal changes, I would say. Like there can be, but we normally get it quite right, or the intention is to get it quite right. We're not talking about a draft that's going to need heaps and heaps of changes. I take this, something like this, a community support policy, which is, as Councillor Bedio, I think, put it, the use of council funds is incredibly important, and I just think that the added pressure by putting in a time frame which I don't think is realistic for the quality that I would like, and that obviously not against the officers. I'm sure they're incredibly fast and quick workers, but I just think that it could be quite a difficult policy to come up with, because there's lots of things that need to be considered. So yes, that's why I move this, and we'll see how it goes.
Thank you, Councillor Byrne. I'll put that amendment to the vote. All those in favour? That is Councillor Bedio and Councillor Byrne. All those against? It's Councillor Adams, Councillor Hodgson, Councillor Isa, Councillor Sharp, Councillor Tyson. I declare that amendment lost. We now return to the substantive motion. Councillor Byrne, did you want the call?
Sure. So I'm obviously supportive of what the officer's recommendation was, and I think the in-kind report, there is enough justification within the report to help with that in-kind support. As mentioned before, and I won't repeat what's already been said, but there's no doubt that Helping Hands Mission do a great job for our municipality. And, I do look and I see that there are a community grants program that is about to open up. We don't sit on the grants committee anymore, but it is something that will be interesting to see if they apply and they end up getting through. But no, look, I'll leave it at that, but I'll also ask Mayor if we can split the motion when it goes to vote. Thank you.
I'll take that on board. can I ask, just for my clarity, what you mean by splitting the vote? Do you mean A, B, C?
Look, I would be happy for A and B to go together and then C separately.
Thank you. I'll consider that. Would any other councillor like to speak? And just a reminder to councillors, Councillor Isa, Hodgson and Byrne have spoken. As there's been some dissent, Councillor Isa, I'll ask if you want a right of reply.
Yeah, look, I guess I'd just be disappointed if point C wasn't supported because of concerns about a timeline. I think that the support, if there's support for the substance of point C, I think we can trust our officers to advise us if they have any difficulty with meeting a 2-month timeline for a reasonably brief report and policy to come back to us. So I guess I'd be very disappointed if that's seen as a reasonable reason to reject point C.
Thank you, Councillor Isa. Having considered Councillor Byrne's request, I will split the motion, A and B, together, and then point C in a second vote. So the first vote I will put is points A and B together. So I'll put that to the vote. All those in favour? That's carried unanimously. And point C I'll put to the vote. All those in favour? That is Councillor Adams, Councillor Bedio, Councillor Hodgson, Councillor Tyson, Councillor Isa, Councillor Sharp. All those against? Councillor Byrne, and I declare the full motion carried. We'll now ask Councillor Sypek to return to the chambers. Welcome back, Councillor Sypek. We now move on to item 9.5, award of contract for Collegian Avenue, Strathmore, road reconstruction, in brackets negotiation number 100039. Councillors, do I have a motion? Councillor Adams.
I'd like to move the officer's recommendation. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. And a seconder? Councillor Bedio. Councillor Adams.
Thanks, Mayor. Collegian Avenue, Strathmore has been identified for complete road reconstruction due to its current poor condition, including insufficient drainage, displaced curb and channel and failed pavement. This motion is to award the contract for the reconstruction of Collegian Avenue, Strathmore, which will be welcome news for residents in this area. The works required include asphalting, curb and channel, stormwater drainage upgrades and associated signage and line marking from Grammar Street to Lomond Street, Strathmore. A public tender was conducted where 3 submissions were received and assessed by a tender evaluation panel against qualitative and quantitative criteria. I'm satisfied that the procurement was carried out in accordance with Council's obligations under the Local Government Act 2020, Council's procurement policy and other relevant legislation, and support this motion to recommend the reward of contract to Metro Asphalt Proprietary Limited, ATF, Centre Fanti Unit Trust, trading as Coal Civil, for the lump sum of $1,148,615.59, excluding GST. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Adams. Councillor Bedio. Nothing to add. Would any other councillor like to speak? If not, I'll put that to the vote. All those in favour? That's carried unanimously. Item 9.6 is variation of contract number 20/215 for concrete maintenance services. Councillors, do I have a motion? Councillor Hodgson.
Thank you, Mayor. I'd like to move a slight alternative to the officer's recommendation. I'll just read out point A. It's a variation to some of those sums. So approve a variation, so the officer's recommendation with varied point A to read, approve a variation of $1,099,184.38 excluding GST, and a revised total contract sum of $5,509,184.38 excluding GST.
Thank you, Councillor Hodgson.
Should have practiced that one.
Is there a seconder? Councillor Adams. Councillor Hodgson.
Thank you, Mayor. After almost butchering what I was attempting to correct there in a couple of typos to the officer's recommendation, I'm happy that this is actually quite a good news story. We received some state government funding to the value of $1.4 million to allow us to do a increased number of repairs to our local footpath and shared path network this year, which meant that we surpassed the endorsed contract amount for these concrete works. And as a result, before the end of this financial year, we need to revise the total contract sum to allow us to finish our required works. So happy to move that. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Hodgson. Councillor Adams. Nothing to add? Would any other councillor like to speak? If not, I'll put that to the vote. All those in favour? It's carried unanimously. Item 10 is noticed as a motion, and we have a few listed on the agenda tonight. 10.1, I'll call on Councillor Isa to present her notice of motion, titled Notice of Motion number 2024/01, Additional Citizenship Ceremonies.
Thanks, Mayor. I'd like to move that Council resolves to request the Chief Executive Officer to bring a report to Council by 27th of February 2024 outlining the cost to Council of holding at least 6 additional citizenship ceremonies in 2024 to reduce wait times for citizenship applicants while also allowing for more than one guest per conferee to be present at this significant occasion. The report could consider the following suggested additional ceremonies. Wednesday, the 27th of March, 7 p.m, in brackets in addition to sessions scheduled for 11 a.m. and 4 p.m. Thursday, the 28th of March, 7 p.m, in addition to sessions scheduled for 11 a.m. and 4 p.m. Wednesday, 15th of March, 6 p.m. and 8 p.m. instead of the 7 p.m. session scheduled. Wednesday, 10th of July, 6 p.m. and 8 p.m. instead of the 7 p.m. session scheduled. Wednesday, 7th of August, 6 p.m. and 8 p.m. instead of the 7 p.m. session scheduled. And Wednesday, 30th of October, 6 p.m. and 8 p.m. instead of the 7 p.m. session scheduled.
Thank you, Councillor Isa. Is there a seconder? Councillor Bedio. Councillor Isa.
Thanks very much, Mayor. Look, it is one of the enormous privileges of councillors, well, particularly the Mayor, actually, to be an authorised person under the Australian Citizenship Act and authorised by the Minister under that Act to be someone who can hear people's pledge of commitment to become a citizen, which is the final step in becoming a citizen of Australia. And I feel really lucky to be in a level of government where that authority is given to us by the Commonwealth Minister. So to have, obviously that power is directly given to the Mayor, but as councillors we're always able to be at those citizenship ceremonies in a supporting role as councillors to the Mayor. And it is one of the most joyous moments of our council role, is being part of people's transition to a new citizenship. It's usually brings tingles to everyone's spine. So what the situation that we're in, though, is that because we work with the Immigration Department, we have to lock in dates each year for that power to be exercised. And so we've locked in these particular dates, and we can't deviate from those dates because we work in partnership logistically with the Immigration Department to make the citizenship, to make everyone aware of when they can come and make their pledge of commitment. So we can't move away from the dates, but we have a backlog in Moonee Valley of people waiting. And so to get through that backlog, the suggestion has been put to us that we need to restrict family members being able to come along as guests to be part of this occasion. And as someone who, I think I have attended every citizenship ceremony this council term because it's so important to me to be part of this moment in people's lives and to meet with families afterwards and to be part of their photos and their cries of joy. It seems to me that limiting people to just one guest is really taking away, for many people, taking away some of the joy and significance of the occasion. So I did ask officers how to best approach this, and the advice given was that it would need to be a resolution of council, even though this is something that the Mayor and councillors do. It's our role. We need a decision of council, a resolution of council to in fact hold more sessions than have been scheduled by the organisation. And timelines, the timeline there is even faster than the timeline in the previous motion, but I have been assured by officers that this timeline can be met, and I've circulated that assurance by email to all colleagues. The report, it's really just a matter of resources, so that council would need to approve the resources that would need to be put into the extra ceremonies. I don't want to put words in the mouth of the Mayor, but I think that he doesn't mind turning up to a few extra ceremonies to allow this to take place. He can let me know if that's not the case. I know that councillors around the table turn up to ceremonies with me, and I hope that you will support this motion to hold more ceremonies so that people can have their families with them on the occasion of becoming a citizen.
Thank you, Councillor Isa. Councillor Bedio.
Thanks, Mayor. Look, not much more to add other than to concur that the citizenship and citizenship ceremonies are such a momentous occasion for those involved and for us as councillors and for you as the Mayor. And it is something that I would hope to see people be able to enjoy with their loved ones and with their families. So I'd be happy to support anything that would allow for that to happen.
Thank you, Councillor Bedio. Would any other councillor like to speak? Councillor Sypek.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I wholeheartedly agree with extra ceremonies because, yes, it's fantastic to have your family and friends around. And I remember back in 1968 when I became an Australian citizen, I was there with my parents and my older brother, and I actually had Sir Dallas Brooks lean over, shake my hand and said to me, "Welcome to Australia, son." And I've never forgotten that as a young child. So I think it's very, very important that we do hold these things. Once again, I totally agree with the whole concept of this. The only thing that I just can't get over is the actual dates in there. I think I would have preferred that it comes back as a report with the dates rather than us putting in a notice of motion and telling officers this is what we want in the notice of motion. So wholeheartedly I agree, but I'm just going to have to decline on this one because I just have trouble getting over the dates.
Thank you, Councillor Sypek. Would any other councillor like to speak? Councillor Byrne.
Mayor, could I please move an amendment?
What is your amendment?
In the last line of before the dot points, from the report, where the cursor is, and down, to delete from there down. To strike out the dates.
Thank you, Councillor Byrne. Is there a seconder for the amendment? Councillor Sypek. Councillor Byrne, would you like to speak to your amendment?
Thanks, Mayor. Look, hopefully this resolves potentially some of Councillor Sypek's concerns. I think that, our job as councillors is to, provide direction, and more so the CEO would be the person to necessarily be setting dates. I'm mindful that the words do say the report could consider. It doesn't say that the report has to consider. But I do find it's possibly, maybe pushing those boundaries a little bit in terms of actually sort of saying what dates. I don't think it's, necessary, and if it's something that can provide Councillor Sypek a little bit more comfort, then I don't think that part is that necessary. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Byrne. Councillor Sypek. Would any other councillor like to speak to the amendment? Councillor Isa.
Thanks, Mayor. So I've just recirculated to councillors the email that I circulated on the 22nd of January at 7 p.m, and I've just recirculated it just now. It's an email from the relevant director outlining the dates on which citizenship ceremonies are being held this year, because as I said in my opening, those dates are locked in with the Department of Immigration. So the dates that I've included in the motion are the dates on which Council is holding citizenship ceremonies, and they are the dates that are already locked in. And the reason for, so that the email outlines when our citizenship ceremonies are already scheduled, and the reason for putting in the email the suggestions was to make it easy for officers to understand my intention, that I wasn't intending for officers to create new dates, that I was saying that Mayor and councillors could be available for additional sessions on those dates at these particular times. So to make it really easy for officers to understand the intention of the motion. Can I just reiterate that I'm not making up those dates in the motion. They are the dates on which citizenship ceremonies are scheduled to be held in Moonee Valley, and the only thing I'm putting in the motion is some times to give guidance to officers, and as noted by Councillor Byrne, the motion says could consider the following suggested alternative ceremonies. The report could come back with some alternative times, but they're going to need to be on those dates, because that's what's locked in. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Isa. Would any other councillor like to speak to the amendment? Councillor Adams.
Thanks, Mayor. I won't be supporting the amendment. I think it's a smart idea to add sessions that are already scheduled. Noting also that in the motion it does say that we're allowing for more than one guest per conferee. So we've only got limited space in the Clock Tower Centre, and so if we have people bringing more than one guest, it means that potentially we won't be conferring as many people on the night, which means that we would need extra sessions, and I think it's just sensible to have it all done on one night. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Adams. Would any other councillor like to speak to the amendment? As there's been dissent, I'll ask Councillor Byrne whether she would like a right of reply.
Probably just to clarify, if I've said, saying the dates, I did mean to sort of like the dates with the times or the change sessions. I just don't think it is the role of a councillor or the role of council to be giving suggested times and dates of when citizenship ceremonies or like really anything for that matter to occur in this prescriptive. It does jog my memory back to another motion in regards to what was it called, occasional care, and there was a prescriptive motion in the last council term which had dates and times, and it was thought that that wasn't appropriate at the time either. So I'll obviously stick with the amendment. I just don't think that we should be saying times.
Thank you, Councillor Byrne. I'll put that amendment to the vote. All those in favour? That is Councillor Byrne and Sypek. All those against? That is Councillor Adams, Bedio, Hodgson, Isa, Sharp, Tyson. I declare that amendment lost. We now return to the substantive. Councillor Byrne, had you started speaking? Did you want to speak to the motion? No, thank you. Would any other councillor like to speak to the substantive motion? As there's been some dissent, Councillor Isa, would you like a right of reply?
Look, I'll just say that I think the difference here is that these particular times are times at which I'm saying that councillors and the mayor can make ourselves available. So the argument that this is not of relevance to councillors I think is somewhat illogical, because these are times at which councillors and the mayor are going to be conducting citizenship ceremonies. Reference was made to something about an occasional care motion. I don't actually recall what that reference is or what was being referred to there, but obviously councillors have nothing to do with the provision of occasional care. We're not the ones providing occasional care. In this circumstance, we're the ones that are attending and these particular ceremonies. So these dates and times relate to us.
Thank you, Councillor Isa. I'll put that to the vote. All those in favour? That is Councillor Adams, Councillor Bedio, Councillor Hodgson, Councillor Isa, Councillor Sharp, Councillor Tyson. All those against? Councillor Byrne, Councillor Sypek. I declare that carried. Item 10.2, I'll call on Councillor Byrne to present her notice of motion, titled Notice of Motion number 2024/02, Boeing Reserve Courts.
Thanks, Mayor. I would like to move that Council resolves to request the Chief Executive Officer to bring a report to Council by the end of April 2024 that includes A, an estimate of the expense for enhancing and upgrading the Boeing Reserve recreational tennis courts, converting them into dual-lined tennis/netball courts, meeting appropriate training standards. B, potential timeframes for adequate community consultation to occur to gain feedback regarding updating the 2014 Boeing Reserve Master Plan to include dual-line tennis/netball courts, and C, alternative options for establishing outdoor training netball courts in either Strathmore or Strathmore Heights.
Thank you, Councillor Byrne. Is there a seconder? Councillor Sypek. Councillor Byrne.
Thanks, Mayor. I brought this notice of motion forward for a few reasons. One being that we have some outdoor recreational courts in Airport West at the moment at Bowes Avenue, and as a lot of people around this table will know, they're not in a great state at the moment, and whilst there are 3 courts at the moment, there is one court that currently sits with a bin underneath the goals section because of how bad the cracking and the surfaces are. Now, as a result of that, the courts will need to be redone, which is a good thing, but because of the changing guidelines, we may actually be losing court space. As a further result of that, it means that potentially we'll have less kids or adults playing sport, and I don't particularly like that. And then looking into it, there was a budget submission that occurred in the previous budget, and it was quite a good budget submission, I thought, and it definitely pricked my ears. And it was in regards to upgrading these courts. It was similar. I feel like it aligns quite well to this motion. So I looked into it a little bit, and I chatted to a few people, and I believe that potentially what would be wanted by the community isn't necessarily in line with the master plan. But we know to update master plans it takes a considerable amount of time, and with that also money. And therefore I sort of looked at particular options. I'm a bit unsure with this upgrade whether it could be a really cheap fix, the sort of $5,000 or $10,000 to put up removable, pull across tennis nets, chuck up some netball rings, do some lines and bang, you're done, or whether it would be, resurfacing, which would obviously be more expensive, but it could be a relatively quick fix. I'm not sure, which is why there's point A. But I do think that there has to be some consideration for all users of the space. I went down there. They don't appear to be, I was down there tonight. It was a beautiful night. There was no one playing tennis. From what was expressed in a social media post on the Strathmore page, it doesn't appear as though there's a lot of tennis that necessarily goes on there, but I think that it would still be quite important to hold on to that tennis there, that bit of a balance. But if not, perhaps if we went out for some community consultation that came back and said, actually, no, this isn't right, perhaps looking somewhere else in Strathmore or Strathmore Heights, there is by looking across the municipality and in MV 2040, there is an incredible amount of open space, not necessarily for large chunks, and I'm not necessarily saying that the open space should be going to concrete where courts will be on, but I do think that there is a huge need and want by the community for training netball courts up in the Strathmore or Strathmore Heights region. So I put this forward to hopefully get the ball rolling without it being, I suppose, too time consuming or too cost prohibitive to come back for the next step. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Byrne. Councillor Sypek, would you like to speak?
Yeah, thank you, Mr Mayor, and thank you, Councillor Byrne, for bringing this up. And I do too remember the submission that was made to convert these to netball courts. And what I really like about this notice of motion is that we're just asking for a report, just asking for the officers to get back to us to see what the feasibility, what the study would be. We don't need to go into massive strategies because over the past couple of years, we've already had netball strategies. If you have a look at Aberfeldy Primary School, we built 10 brand new courts there with lights. We also did Fairburn Park, that's where all the strategy was. But now, what we're looking at here is getting a report back to see whether we can capitalise on underutilised infrastructure within the city. And I think this is a smart move, just asking for a report. It's not going to be over expensive. We're not going to involve departments within council. It'll be just a simple report back. That's all it is. Thank you, Mr Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Sypek. Would any other councillor like to speak? Councillor Adams.
Thanks, Mayor. Netball growth in Moonee Valley is huge. Netball growth in Strathmore and Strathmore Heights has been particularly strong over the last few years, thanks to the tireless hard work and dedication of our community members. The Strathmore Heights Netball Club was incorporated in November 2020 and its first season established 5 teams. In this coming autumn season, there will be 18 teams with approximately 160 players, a growth of 255% in just 3 years. It's extraordinary. It's absolutely undeniable that there is a need for netball training facilities at Boeing Reserve. The Boeing Reserve Master Plan was consulted on and subsequently endorsed in 2014. In it, netball facilities are planned adjacent to the existing 2 tennis courts that are walk-on public courts, which are rare, highly sought-after facilities in our municipality. I went to Boeing Reserve last night and both courts were being used by casual tennis users, and it was really lovely to see. This facility in the existing master plan is proposed to be a new build that is multi-lined for both basketball and netball. So just to be clear, the master plan addresses the needs of 3 sports in this area: basketball, netball and tennis. Whilst I appreciate that this motion is trying to address the lack of netball facilities in this area, it's at the expense of other sports whose needs council was meeting at the time this master plan was consulted on and endorsed. And this is just one of the reasons I can't support this motion in its current form. Since 2014, we've endorsed the Growth in Tennis Plan in 2021, which identifies the need for more tennis courts, mentions the 2 public courts at Boeing Reserve, and in fact recommends a 3rd tennis court be built at Boeing Reserve, subject to a review of the master plan, as it is a contradiction of the current or endorsed plan to meet the growing needs of tennis in the municipality. Also, since 2014, and particularly in this council term, we've heard loud cries from our basketball community about the lack of basketball facilities, which has led to numerous reports coming to this council with an incredible amount of work officers have done to identify and look for ways to resolve the needs and shortages of basketball facilities in Moonee Valley. I'm not sure if we have a netball plan or a strategy. I haven't been able to find one. However, speaking to councillors who have been around for a long time, do recall discussion around this. So there may be, in fact, some work I haven't been able to find. And so herein lies the challenges we face when trying to meet the needs of individual community groups, and why at a high level we must uphold strategic thinking and direction. As I said,
Councillor Adams, your time has expired. Would you like an extension?
Yes, please.
I'll give you 30 seconds. Thanks.
So we must uphold strategic thinking and direction. As I said earlier, whilst I appreciate the intention of this motion to respond to the needs of our netball community, as the motion stands, I can't support it. So I'd like to move an amendment if I may, please, Mayor.
What's your amendment?
That Council resolves to request the CEO to bring a report to Council by the end of April 2024 that includes striking out Part A and Part B to change to Part A and to read potential timeframes for a review of the 2014 Boeing Reserve Master Plan, including feedback on netball facilities, to be considered as part of the 24-25 budget processes, and Part C to change to Part B and to read alternative options for establishing outdoor training netball courts in either Strathmore or Strathmore Heights, noting any previous netball plans or strategies or the potential development of a netball strategy to be considered as part of the 24-25 budget processes.
Thank you, Councillor Adams. Can I just get you to confirm what's on the screen there, if you can read it, is what you read out?
Yep, correct.
Yep, great, thank you. And I'll just note for councillors looking at, obviously the strike through isn't on there, but I think everyone can follow what was read. Is there a seconder? Councillor Sharp. Councillor Adams.
Thanks, Mayor, and thank you, Councillor Sharp, for supporting this amendment. The amendment seeks to look into the needs of netball at a strategic level, as well as potentially review the Boeing Reserve Master Plan, which is 10 years old. We know that the growth in netball, basketball and tennis in this area of Strathmore looks differently today than it did 10 years ago. So I'm hoping the report can inform us of options for outdoor training netball courts in either Strathmore or Strathmore Heights, so that a strategic approach can be taken if we're considering changes to the current Boeing Reserve Master Plan through a review.
Thank you, Councillor Adams. Councillor Sharp.
Thank you, Mayor. happy to support this amendment. I think if we are looking at revisiting the Boeing Reserve Master Plan, which we need to in order to look at the potential of netball facilities at this location, this is the correct way to do it. So we can achieve a holistic look at the entire plan and look at what has changed since 2014. I'm certainly happy to support netball in this area. I have no doubt about that, but I guess my concern is at the expense of tennis, which we know is growing, and that we do have a tennis in Growth Plan 4, sorry. So we have looked at that in the last few years. So happy to support netball. It's just how we do it and the best way to do it. Knowing all the facts and figures around what is in use up there now and how it can be done. We just need to understand how the best way it can be achieved, and I'm happy to support this motion in enabling that to happen. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Sharp. Would any other councillor like to speak on the amendment? Councillor Byrne.
Thanks, Mayor. So I suppose the thing that I don't understand about this amendment is it's still going to be asking for a report back. So that side of things is good. Point A being struck out, I really don't see the point of that, because it would be an extra paragraph, 2 paragraphs or whatnot, and a little bit of officers' work to find out an estimate for an expense, so we've got some sort of an idea. It's not saying that we have to go and build them, it's just asking for a little bit of information. I think the more comprehensive a report can be when it comes back, the better. So I don't understand at all the point of crossing out point A. In terms of point B, it's asking for a review of the Boeing Reserve, potential timeframes for a review of the Boeing Reserve Master Plan, as opposed to just consultation on the first bit. Again, I'm not against reviewing the Boeing Reserve Master Plan, but I feel like by the time we've got a review of every master plan, something that could actually be a really quick, simple fix is actually a 12-month process. And, you know, sometimes I do feel like we're sort of stuck in a bit of a roundabout to actually get anywhere. In terms of point C, I don't have an issue in regards to that, noting any previous netball plans or strategies, or the potential development of a netball strategy to be considered. I think that Councillor Adams actually did highlight one of the issues that we had, and it has come up twice, and the fact is that when we do these strategies for particular sports, they don't actually take into account other sports. With the tennis court growth, when we did the tennis strategy, they're like, yeah, let's have an extra tennis court. When we've done soccer strategies, it's like, yeah, let's have extra soccer fields. And probably when we do a netball strategy, it's going to say, yeah, let's have extra netball courts, and they don't necessarily talk to each other, which I think is why it's, you know, important to have the open space strategy and how these are all going to link in. But again, we can feel like we're in an episode of Utopia with things somewhat going round and round. So I won't be supporting the amendment. I don't think that it's necessary, and I don't think it's beneficial. I probably would have been supportive of a different amendment, adding in various bits, but considering it's still asking for a report back, I would probably just say put it all in so we have more information, not different and less. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Byrne. Would any other councillor like to speak on the amendment? Councillor Hodgson.
Thanks, Mayor. Look, I will be supporting the amendment. I think it does resolve a concern that I have had with the original point A. You know, notwithstanding Councillor Byrne's thoughts that it's just a quote, it did feel to me a bit like putting the cart before the horse on this one, given that there was, you know, mentioned getting a quote before even talking about going and asking people about the idea. If I've learnt anything in this term of council, it's about, you know, in as Councillor Adams has outlined, in trying to meet the needs of one group, you will inevitably impact the interests of another group, and interests that, we do careful strategic planning to try and understand holistically, and to balance and to meet the needs of. So I think, I'm much more comfortable with revisiting and potentially reviewing the Boeing Reserve Master Plan, rather than, in trying to solve a problem created up the road, potentially pushing a new problem onto Boeing Reserve and the tennis courts there. It's bringing back memories of a situation we faced in our first year of this council term. So, look, the wording of the amendment is something I'm comfortable with. I understand that, potentially adds a bit of time that Councillor Byrne was trying to avoid, but I do feel that in order to make sure that we're making, the right decisions and not having unintended consequences, sometimes it's important for us to take that time and to make sure that our strategies all work together and balance the needs of all the people in our community who, want to access training courts. Thanks.
Thank you. Would any other councillor like to speak on the amendment? Councillor Isa.
Thanks, Mayor. Look, just a comment was made that that there was a sort of a lack of understanding as to why point A ought to be struck out. And so I guess I just want to explain why I think point A ought to be struck out. And it's because point A asks for something that is not part of any of our current strategic planning. It's responding to an ad hoc request that may be a meritorious request, but we can't possibly know that or decide that without a proper review of the strategies that currently govern, or that currently set out what we've planned to do with the particular Boeing Reserve, with the particular reserve. So the reason I have for wanting to support striking out point A is that our role as councillors is to set strategic plans and then to implement those plans and review them. That's our role. Our role is not to respond to ad hoc, one-off requests from community members that are inconsistent and in conflict with the strategies that we've set without reviewing those. Councillor Hodgson also talked about the really important role that we have in meeting the diverse needs of our municipality. And we run the risk when we respond in unpredictable and ad hoc ways of inadvertently overlooking some needs and prioritising other needs. And our role again is to govern in a way that meets the needs of the municipality. It was mentioned that there was, that a quick, simple fix is preferred. Well, again, a quick, simple fix that runs counter to our strategic planning is not something, while it might be an efficient outcome, it's not our role as councillors to prioritise efficiency over strategic planning. And I guess I don't really like being compared to being in an episode of a farcical comedy. I certainly am not behaving tonight as though I'm in an episode of a farcical comedy. I'm taking my role really seriously, and I probably don't really, I find that disappointing.
Thank you, Councillor Isa. Would any other councillor like to speak on the amendment? Councillor Sypek.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Well, it's interesting to see the views of some of my colleagues, and I look with great anticipation to see whether we're going to have these same beliefs for the next notice of motion about ad hoc, one-off things against strategies. But I just don't understand why asking for a simple report has to be this complicated, and we have to go from just getting a report, which will probably most likely be a one-pager, which will most likely, and I'm just just guessing here that it could be, no, it's got to stay as it is and we're going to leave it as tennis courts because there's a need for it. That's what the report will do. Now instead, we're going to go and look at this in a holistic point of view. Now, I don't know, but Councillor Byrne and I, we are on top of all our master plans. We don't let anything ride to 2014. We make sure that our master plans are up to date. And if they're not, we ask for them to be up to date. So for me, asking for a report would be a great idea. And then maybe sometime in the future, we can look at changing the master plan, because down at Boeing Reserve, there's been a lot of activity down there with the baseball, the cricket, the Chris Lane field, and maybe it is time to review it. But just to get a simple report, that's all it is. It's going to be a one-pager, might take an officer a week just to understand it, maybe go back to the 2014 strategy, look at the tennis strategy, look at the netball strategy that we had when we did at Befaldi Primary and Fairburn Park, because we actually had other netball courts at, I think it's Bowes Avenue, which weren't suitable. And, they're the kind of things that happen on a small scale. And like I said, for me, it's also about, not asking for big strategies, because they cost. A simple report doesn't cost that much.
Thank you, Councillor Sypek. Councillor Bedio, you're the only councillor who hasn't spoken on this amendment. Would you like to speak? No. I'll ask the mover of the amendment whether she would like a right of reply.
I will, thanks, Mayor. I am more comfortable taking this strategic approach and hope others can support this amendment. We are councillors, and at a high level, we must uphold strategic thinking and direction. All I'm doing in this amendment is resolving my discomfort, and it sounds like others as well, with the moved notice of motion, which I believe is overriding an existing master plan, preempting an outcome favouring one sport over others, dismisses community consultation already undertaken, interferes in proper process, and is undermining good governance. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Adams. I will now put the amendment to the vote. All those in favour? That is Councillor Adams, Councillor Hodgson, Councillor Isa, Councillor Sharp, Councillor Tyson. All those against? Councillor Bedio, Councillor Byrne, Councillor Sypek. I declare that amendment carried. And we now return to the substantive motion. Councillor Adams has 20 seconds remaining of your speaking time. Thank you. Would any councillor like to speak on the substantive motion? Councillor Sypek, you seconded the motion. Would any other councillor like to speak? Look, as there's been dissent through the amendment, I will ask the mover whether she would like to close.
Thanks, Mayor. Look, I'm still going to support the motion. I didn't support the amendment, but I feel like from where we were before tonight, we're still in a better place than where we would be if this was to not get up. So where we've landed is for potential timeframes for a review of the Boeing Reserve Master Plan, including feedback on netball facilities to be considered as part of the 2024 budget process and alternative options. As I said, I don't think it necessarily has the strength as the previous motion, but at least it is something, and something is better than nothing. I think that there was probably some, and I think it was touched on by Councillor Sharp, that there have been so many changes since 2014 in regards to netball down in Strathmore, and that at the time when this was done, changing the one court with the hit-up wall on it to be netball, basketball was probably quite adequate, but realistically, that you don't train with a club with one court. You have multiple courts and multiple teams to make it more effectively, and I'm fairly sure that you would get a lot of opposition in regards to just doing a one court. We had that issue at Overland Reserve when there was thoughts of doing one court up there. I hope that the communities that see this see that there are still some positives in here, and that at least it will progress things. And hey, it's put netball in the, you know, actually increasing the participation in netball from a casual use on the agenda for this council term, because I don't believe, or whilst there's been for facilities and change rooms, the actual increase in participation numbers hasn't been a priority. So it'll be interesting to see what it comes back with. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Byrne. I'll put that to the vote. All those in favour? That is carried unanimously. The final notice of motion tonight is from myself, and I will move it. So I'll temporarily vacate the chair and ask the Deputy Mayor to become the temporary chair and take a seat.
Okay, thank you, Mayor. So we are up to agenda item 10.3. I'd like to call on Councillor Tyson to present his notice of motion titled Notice of Motion number 2024-03, Street Lighting on Roberts Road, Airport West.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. I move that Council resolves to request the Chief Executive Officer to provide a report at the next Council meeting on options for installation of additional or adjustments to street lighting at 15 Roberts Road, Airport West, for additional illumination at night.
Thank you, Councillor Tyson. Councillors, do I have a seconder, please? Councillor Hodgson, thank you. Councillor Tyson, would you like to speak to your motion?
Thank you, Deputy Mayor, Temporary Chair. Well, look, they say all politics is local. This is probably one of the most hyper-local motions I've ever moved. Normally I would ask councillors to move something in my stead. However, I think something so local, so specific, I think it probably warrants me explaining it myself. There's been a service request from constituents close to this location, named in my motion around street lighting. That's gone to our officers who have looked at the situation, saw that things have met minimum standards, and essentially said that to me, I would have to bring this through a notice of motion, which is perfectly acceptable. The multiple houses, the occupants have said to me that they feel that there are some safety concerns in terms of illumination at night, and that they would appreciate additional street lighting in and around their properties. As well, there are some considerations from these residents to me around their age as well as their surrounding neighbours, and they'd really appreciate council to take a second look at this. So what this motion does is, as other notices of motion have mentioned, bring a report back at the next council meeting. I understand that officers have done some work on this. However, this would be an additional cost to council, which isn't allowable under a notice of motion. So asking for a report back to detail all that would be required for this local request. So thank you to the residents for bringing it to my attention, and I hope councillors support it. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Tyson. Councillor Hodgson, would you like to say a few words, please?
Thanks, Temporary Chair. I'm happy to support this notice of motion. I think street safety, is incredibly important. I don't know the details of the area that well, but I know that we work very closely and hard with Victoria Police on community safety. It's it's a very important role, and I'd be happy to understand the issue a little bit better and understand what we might be able to do to support the interests of community safety in Roberts Road. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Hodgson. Would any other councillor like to speak to the item? Councillor Sypek?
Thank you, and I'm just waiting with anticipation for someone to come along and put an alternative and ask for her. We should put this towards a lighting strategy, but I don't think that's going to be coming tonight. So my problem with this is if the officers have looked at this and they've said that it's minimal standards, okay, I understand that. But if this goes ahead and we put in extra lights, this is going to set a precedent for every street in Moonee Valley because everyone's going to want extra lighting. So I just want to play on the side of caution. Do we just ask for a report, or should we actually refer this to a lighting strategy and get our officers to not just ad hoc this, but create a lighting strategy for the whole of Moonee Valley on a holistic view so we can look at every single street in Moonee Valley? Because I think there's a lot more streets that require this, and we shouldn't just focus on one, we should focus on the whole city. Just my thoughts.
Thank you, Councillor Sypek. Any other councillor wish to speak? Councillor Byrne?
Look, it is, in my opinion, quite interesting that this particular motion has been followed from the last one. There was, can't remember who said it, but there was a comment about ad hoc one-off requests from community members in relation to the last one. And this looks like an ad hoc one-off request from a community member in order to fix lighting. It's quite, I don't have the right word for it, I apologise. But it is somewhat interesting. There could very easily be merit in this. I do remember Clementine Ford coming into Moonee Valley and speaking very well at a presentation in regards to lighting. Being in light spaces doesn't actually increase safety. And it was particularly around females, I believe. And so I'm not necessarily sure about the safety thing. It can have a perceived safety effect. Anyway, that's that was a few years ago now. So, look, I think that, as Council has also mentioned previously, we normally look at the strategic level. I cannot see how, if we're looking at lighting in front of one address, is necessarily strategic. So I don't think I'll be supporting this.
Thank you, Councillor Byrne. Any other councillor like to speak to the item? Councillor Isa?
A key difference between this and the previous motion is that the previous motion, before it had been amended, set out a particular action that it wanted taken in response to a request. So the previous motion asked for costings to achieve an outcome. This motion doesn't. This motion instead asks for options. And one of those options might be, Deputy Mayor, do you mind just asking if councillors not laugh at other councillors while they're speaking, please?
Sorry, Councillor Isa. Councillors, please refrain from laughing at other councillors while they're speaking, please.
One of the options might be that we actually need to take a strategic approach to our street lighting. If the minimum standards are not satisfying elderly residents or are causing safety concerns, one of the options might be that we actually need to do some advocacy around those minimum standards. We might need to do some more strategic work to look at where illumination might meet technical standards but doesn't meet community feelings of safety. This is a much broader approach to a particular problem, and that's the key difference between the two motions. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Isa. Any other councillor wish to speak to this motion? Councillor Tyson, as there has been some dissent, I'll ask you to close, please.
No need. Thank you.
No need? Okay, I shall put that motion to the vote then. All those in favour? Councillor Tyson, Councillor Isa, Councillor Hodgson, Councillor Bettio, Councillor Adams. All those against? Oh, and myself, sorry, four. All those against? Councillor Sypek and Councillor Byrne. That motion is carried. I'll now vacate the chair for the Mayor to continue chairing.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. I hope you're all right there. We now, councillors, move on to item 11, urgent business. Councillors, do we have any urgent business?
Yes, Mayor, I have urgent business, please.
Thank you. Councillor Sharp, I'll give you a moment to reacquaint yourself.
The motion would read, so first I need to request that the urgent business is admitted, and my motion does read that Council resolves to omit item in-person meetings to be considered as urgent business as it complies with our governance rules. 25.2.1 relates to or arises out of a matter which has arisen only since the distribution of the agenda, and 25.2.2 is confined to a matter that cannot safely or conveniently be deferred until the next council meeting, and 25.2.3 it cannot be addressed through an operational service request process, therefore will need to be resolved tonight.
Thank you, Councillor Sharp. Before I request a seconder, does any councillor have a conflict of interest in the urgent business to be considered? Councillors, do I have a seconder that this be considered urgent? Councillor Adams. I'll now call on apologies, Councillor Sharp. The notes are wrong. I'll ask you to speak to why the matter be considered and admitted as urgent.
Without detailing the motion, it is in regards to in-person meetings, and in light with what has happened over the past 24 hours, I think it is in Council's best interests to ensure that we have good governance practices as early as possible, hence this request or this motion seeking in-person meetings, and it is a matter which has only arisen since the last 24 hours and cannot be safely or conveniently deferred.
Thank you. Councillor Adams, would you like to speak as to why it be considered urgent? No? Would any other councillor like to speak as to why this be considered urgent? Councillor Sypek.
Thank you, Mr Mayor, and I'll be supporting this urgent business. This should have happened a long time ago. When COVID restrictions finished, that's when this should have been brought up. Not now, not because something's happened in the last 24 hours. This should have been brought back to council ages ago. And I was always, I just couldn't understand.
Councillor Sypek, we'll just check that you're just talking as to why it's urgent, not the substance of the motion.
Yeah, sorry.
Thank you. Anything to add? No? Would any other councillor like to speak as to why this be considered urgent? Councillor Byrne.
Sure. 25.2.2 is confined to a matter that cannot safely or conveniently be deferred until the next council meeting. Considering we have had strategic briefings online since 2020, and it's in regards to in-person meetings, this thing, it can be safely and conveniently deferred. So without getting into obviously what the actual motion is in terms of urgent business, I don't believe it meets it.
Thank you, Councillor Byrne. Would any other councillor like to speak as to why this be considered urgent? Councillor Isa.
So between now, just to speak to the point that was just raised around 25.2.2 and why this is a matter that should be dealt with tonight rather than deferred to the next meeting. Between now and the next meeting, we have a councillor briefing, and we also have in fact a planning day in the chamber. So there are two occasions on which the contents of this urgent business would be relevant between now and the next meeting. So in my view, it does satisfy that second threshold test for urgency.
Thank you, Councillor Isa. Would any other councillor like to speak as to why this be considered urgent? If not, I'll ask Councillor Sharp whether she would like to close on why it be considered urgent.
No, thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. I will put to the vote that we consider the urgent business. All those in favour? That is Councillor Adams, Councillor Bedio, Councillor Hodgson, Councillor Isa, Councillor Sharp, Councillor Sypek, Councillor Tyson. All those against? Councillor Byrne. I declare that carried. Councillor Sharp, now that the matter has been considered as an item of urgent business, I will ask you to move your urgent business motion.
Thank you, Mayor. The motion reads that Council resolves to A, welcome the announcement by the Minister for Local Government that municipal monitors will work with the Moonee Valley City Council for 6 months to assist the Council in improving performance and serving the interests of the community. B, assist the monitors in their task and take the opportunity to seek relevant assistance and guidance in the improvement of Council's governance processes and practices. And C, adopt the following practices immediately. 1, accept by agreement of the Mayor and CEO, hold all Council strategic briefings and workshop sessions in person with options available for councillors to attend by electronic means where there are personal, health, family emergencies or extraordinary circumstances. Point 2, include on Council's website a record of councillor attendance at Council briefings and meetings, including whether attendance is by electronic means and any approved leave of absence for the period of the Council term commencing November 2020. Point D, initiate a process of reviewing Council's governance rules with appropriate community engagement and consultation with municipal monitors, with consideration of including a request made under Rule 82 to attend a Council meeting by electronic means must include relevant medical certification or statutory declaration within 24 hours to support the request.
Thank you, Councillor Sharp, and I'll just make sure governance has that, because I think they might have been looking at the an earlier version. Thank you, Councillor Sharp. Is there a seconder? Councillor Adams. Councillor Sharp.
Thank you, Mayor. Obviously, this motion is pretty self-explanatory, but I think it's important that we come together as a councillor group for strategic briefings, especially as the monitors will be present. I think it will help facilitate the work they need to do in ensuring that we comply with good governance practices and everything else in between. So obviously point C is talking about the briefings and workshop sessions. From what I understand, we're one of the few councillors that have continued with online briefings or Zoom briefings, electronic briefings, whatever you'd like to call them. I personally haven't minded them per se. I often find that the technology bombs out or something, which can be problematic. So, in person is always the better way to go. But I guess, things that happen in COVID, sometimes they've just stayed around through no fault of anybody or anything. And sometimes it's just easier not to have to travel anywhere, really. But aside from that, looking forward, we need to, as I said, enable the work of the monitors to be done conducively and with the councillor group, and that's pretty much the reasoning behind this motion. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Sharp. Councillor Adams.
Thanks, Mayor. I concur with everything that Councillor Sharp has said. I think holding strategic briefings and workshops sessions in person is really welcomed by me, and look forward to having our future meetings in person. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Adams. Would any other councillor like? Councillor Sypek.
Thank you, Mr Mayor, and I will be supporting this motion. And I'll tell you the reason why I'm going to support this motion. I just can't understand why Moonee Valley is probably one of the last bastions of local government to hold meetings virtually like this. When COVID restrictions lifted, most councils went back to in-person meetings. And I've been asking, why haven't we been following the rest of the local government sector? And it's been falling on deaf ears, and I'm absolutely glad that this has come up, and thank you, Mr Mayor, for bringing it up as urgent business, because we should have done this a long, long time ago. Not now, not because of what's happened. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Sypek. Would any other councillor like to speak to the motion? Councillor Hodgson.
Thanks, Mayor. And look, I too will support the urgent business. Councillor Sharp has raised a couple of points around the convenience of having our briefings be online, and as a breastfeeding mother, I certainly appreciate that it's only every second Tuesday that I come in, but we all around the table take this role and our responsibilities really seriously, and I think what can be achieved when we all sit in the room together, it's just a better approach and outcome, I think, for healthy and respectful debate, and a better means of acquiring that information that we get at the strategic briefing. So conveniences aside, I'm very supportive of having this, because I think, we've seen in some of our workshop sessions and things what advantage sitting in the room together has. Not to say that our briefings to date haven't been very informative. I think it just offers another opportunity. And as Councillor Sharp has said, I think the point was well made that it will also be helpful for the monitors and assist them in doing their work effectively. So I'm happy to support it.
Thank you, Councillor Hodgson. Would any other councillor like to speak? Councillor Bedio.
Look, I'm honestly not sure how I feel about this. The role of the councillor is obviously something that we all take here in the chambers very seriously, and it's something that we put as a priority. However, the reality is a lot of us need to maintain other obligations as much as we would like. A lot of us would like this to be. Being a councillor can't be a full-time job. Many of us need to maintain outside employment. Some of us have families. Some of us have other obligations outside of this role. And we're moving in, our society in general is moving towards being able to have, and we see it in a lot of workplaces, in particular public service, we have the ability, or they have the ability, to work from home. They have the ability to join in meetings through Zoom or through Teams. I think in particular point D is quite disappointing that you would only be able to attend a council meeting via electronic means if you provide a medical certificate or a statutory declaration, there's lots of reasons why potentially, despite your best attempts, you wouldn't be able to attend a council meeting in person. That maybe, like it says above, maybe there is a family emergency. It could be anything. I think that it's quite harsh, point D. So I'm not sure how I feel about this motion in general. Thanks, Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Bedio. Would any other councillor like to speak? Councillor Byrne.
Sure. Look, I won't be supporting this motion in its entirety. I will touch on what Councillor Bedio said first, which we've already got rules in regards to why you can skip meetings, and there are quite a broad range of those. So, but I do feel like it's almost like we're being like needing a medical certificate or stat dec. I can't think of any time for anything we do on council where we've needed a medical certificate or a stat dec. Like, I feel like there needs to be some level of ownership or like responsibility or courtesy or just respect amongst each others to go, you know what, if I need to have a if I need to follow Rule 82 and not come into a council meeting and zoom in because something's gone wrong, like the idea that I'll have to produce a stat dec because I need to care for my child just is mind-boggling. I don't like that at all. I just feel like we're grown-ups, and I just really don't understand it. But I'll leave that bit to the side. The reason why I won't be supporting this is work from home is something that came into place during COVID, and it has been something that there has been a lot of research on, and it has particularly improved the quality of life of people. Me personally, I think I get better outcomes online than in person, and I completely understand that not necessarily everyone will think the same. But by working online, there's increased flexibility, improved work-life balance, decreased commuting time, decreased carbon footprint, potentially increased productivity. There's a decrease of expense for the organisation to run meetings. There's potentially increased job satisfaction and increased job opportunities, and particularly opportunities around diversity, inclusion. I think particularly the wording of this motion is not good, and I won't be supporting it, and I think that in years to come we'll look back on a motion on this and go, wow, like this is probably something that it will get spoken about at forums in regards to it, the hard stance against what is effectively work from home when we can work from home. And also I'll touch on point point 2, which is include on Council's website a record of councillor attendance at council briefings and meetings, including whether attendance is by electronic means, and any approved leave of absence, and it's going back to November 2020. That reads to me as though it's like trying to name and shame people that have been in attendance via electronic means. And I'm happy to use personal examples. My kids are, how old are they now? Like 2, 5 and 7. Sometimes my husband has night shift. I have no option. It is what I do to go online. And when this comes up, there's no stat decs to go back as to why. I knew that I was zooming in for the right reason. But I feel like this is just is probably my best word for it. I don't think it's well worded, and I think that there may be issues that the Monitor is looking into, but council is zooming in for line to, for the better to, try to improve a few things. I really
Councillor Byrne, your time has expired.
Small thing. Thanks.
Thank you. Would any other councillor like to speak? Councillor Isa.
Thanks, Mayor. Look, just on that last point, all of the information under C2 is currently publicly available. If people want that information, though, they would need to trawl through all of the minutes for all of the meetings and then the periodic reports that come to council where our attendance at briefings is included in governance reports. So that information is all there, publicly available already. And my understanding is that the point of C1 is to make that transparently available for people. So there's nothing new in point C2. It's about recognising that our attendance is key to us performing our duties and making that information easier for people to access. So look, I do support this motion. I think that, there's obviously a reason that we will be joined over the next 6 months by some supportive and very helpful guidance to improve our practices, and I understand this motion to be us reflecting on some things that might be of concern and things that we can act on off our own bat and take some initiative to act on, and signalling to people who might have concerns that we are self-reflective, we're keen to improve, and we're keen to act. Just with respect to point D, it's about it's initiating a process of reviewing councillors' governance rules. Now, governance rules need to be reviewed through a process of consultation, so that involves community engagement and consultation. So we can't just change things. It's about initiating that and seeing what the community thinks about that. So if there's any concerns like those concerns raised by councillors tonight, if those concerns are shared by community members, that can be brought to the fore in the feedback. Rule 82 already specifies that that there are some really pretty tight parameters around when electronic means can be sought for attendance, and we perhaps haven't been applying that very strictly. I think perhaps one of our reflections, or one of my reflections. Mayor, and just before my time expires, I might just move an amendment, if I may.
Sure. What's your amendment?
A new point E, which I've just sent through to governance. That reads, sorry, governance, I'm just wondering if, following consultation with municipal monitors, consider including on council's website where political affiliation is documented, councillor's suburb and postcode of primary place of residence.
Thank you, Councillor Isa. Is there a seconder? Councillor Hodgson. Councillor Isa.
Look, I'd move this, I guess, to flag that it's something that to seek some advice from municipal monitors as to whether this would be helpful or not, and if the feedback is not, then obviously it doesn't need to be acted on. One of the things that's in the terms of reference is a reference to conflict of interest, and I'm not sure if this might help with transparency around conflicts of interest. It may or it may not, I'm not sure, but I wanted to flag that as something to get a bit technical. Each 6 months, councillors need to submit a primary interests return, and that's all on our website. In that particular document, we need to list the suburb of any property in which we have a beneficial interest, and then we need to list what the purpose of that property is. And it's always been my understanding that the purpose of that is to give some general transparency around where we have conflicts of interest with respect to our place of residence. Now, I may have misunderstood that, I'm not sure, but I'm not sure that that's the way in which those primary returns are filled out. So again, I guess I'm flagging this for some feedback from and some advice from municipal monitors as to whether this would be a useful thing for us to do to improve our transparency and respond to any concern around conflict of interests. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Isa. Councillor Hodgson.
Thanks, Mayor. Look, I seconded for debate to understand better the intention there, and thank you. My thanks through you, Mayor, to Councillor Isa for that explanation. I think there's a couple of things that were clarified there for me. The potential usefulness, and then also the wording of following consultation with municipal monitors, which I originally read as that consultation had taken place with municipal monitors and this consideration was being put forward. But understanding that point E is to go and have that conversation with municipal monitors to understand whether it is a useful addition, that resolves that question for me, and I'm happy to support the wording with that explanation. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Hodgson. Would any other councillor like to speak on the amendment? If not, Councillor Bedio.
Thanks, Mayor. Through you. Look, I can appreciate the intent in this, however, I can't support it.
Sorry, Councillor Bedio, I'll need you to speak into the mic.
I appreciate the intent with this, however, I can't support this. Under the Local Government Act, there's specific, it's quite specific in the sense of what makes you eligible to be, to run for council and to be an elected official within that council, and it doesn't necessitate living within those council boundaries. And for, I'm not speaking on behalf of myself here, but I'd be concerned that if a councillor was to be eligible to run within the City of Moonee Valley, however, for some reason is not residing in Moonee Valley at that time, that would be prejudicial to them. Something that I would consider to be quite concerning, so I wouldn't be able to support that amendment.
Thank you, Councillor Bedio. Would any other councillor like to speak to the amendment? Councillor Byrne.
Look, I'm probably a bit split with it because I don't actually think it needs to be in the motion. I think we're hopefully going to get a lot of advice from the municipal monitors in terms of what we should do, in terms of how we can improve things. And if I was going to, I don't know, like if I was going to be adding an extra dot point to this motion in regards to how we can improve governance in the municipality, which I think is what the point of this point E was, adding people's postcodes to the website would probably not have been the one I would have picked. So I just don't, like, you know, I live in East Keilor, I've said that, and I don't have a problem with people knowing that I live in 3033, but there may be people who do not necessarily want it disclosed that openly and easily to, you know, be found. I don't know, I don't think other councils do this. I feel like it's not going to help with the conflict of interest side of things, so I'll probably not support it.
Thank you, Councillor Byrne. Would any other councillor like to speak on the amendment? Councillor Sypek.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I also see this as problematic, and it's in regards to what happens if you own a property in Moonee Valley and you live in, let's say, Brunswick West, which is like maybe a street away, or you live on the wrong side of Pascoe Road. What happens then? I don't know. You know, state and federal politicians don't live in their electorates. They live outside their electorates, but all of a sudden, you know, there's a big focus on councillors living in their electorates. And yes, I suppose we should live in our electorates, and I live in 3033 like Councillor Byrne. But I sort of worry about people who own properties, who have been in the Moonee Valley community for many years, but they might just live outside the boundaries. I just find that probably a little bit discriminatory towards people who own properties but not necessarily live in Moonee Valley. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Sypek. Would any other councillor like to speak to the amendment? If not, I will ask the mover whether she would like the right of reply.
Yeah, look, it's not my intention to be discriminatory at all. As I explained, my understanding is that our 6 monthly the interest returns, I don't think I've got the name of them exactly right, but it's the primary interest return and then the biannual, thank you. My understanding is that when we fill out those returns, we're meant to nominate the suburb and postcode of any property that we have, as I say, have a beneficial interest in, and that we're meant to put the purpose of that. And so my understanding is that this information is meant to be transparently available via those interest returns. Maybe I've misunderstood that, but that's not currently the way we complete them. They are completed, and so I would like, and that pertains to conflict of interest, which is something that is referred to in the terms of reference with respect to assisting us with our governance practices. So I'm happy to be corrected, look forward to conversations, flagging this as something that has been troubling me, and think that it's appropriate to put that forward as given the other contents of the motion tonight.
Thank you, Councillor Isa. I will now put that amendment to the vote. All those in favour? That is Councillor Adams, Councillor Hodgson, Councillor Isa, Councillor Tyson. All those against? That is Councillor Bedio, Byrne, Sharp and Sypek. On the casting vote of the Mayor, I declare that amendment carried to form the substantive part of the motion. We now return to the substantive motion. Councillor Isa has 15 seconds left on the clock. You would not like to speak to the substantive, thank you. As all councillors have spoken, I'd ask Councillor Sharp whether she would like a right of reply.
Thank you, Mayor. Just quickly, taking on board everybody's comments, I'd just like to state that this is not at all a naming and shaming process. Every single one of us has attended a briefing since 2020 via electronic means, because we haven't held them in person since 2020. So it's certainly not anything to do with naming and shaming, because we're all included. None of us have attended a briefing other than via electronic means. So I'm just putting that out there. Final closing, otherwise everything else is pretty much self-explanatory. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Sharp. I'll put that to the vote. All those in favour? It's Councillor Adams, Councillor Hodgson, Councillor Isa, Councillor Sharp, Councillor Tyson. All those against? Councillors Bedio, Byrne, Sypek. I declare that carried. Is there any other business, councillors? If not, I will close the meeting at 11 minutes past 9. I wish everyone joining us at home to have a great evening, and we'll see you next time. Thank you.